Thank you for being with me for this healing webinar, Healing with Packages of Divine Wisdom. Um, I'll start with a brief overview of what is energy healing, and then follow that with 3 minutes of silence and a prayer of gratitude, and then dive into the topic. So, what is energy healing? Energy healing is the act of directing attention to the areas of the body or the areas of life, even that need some transformation. Whatever areas of life seem to have fallen away from alignment with your pure truth or fallen away from alignment with your full potential, we could say, those areas need to be like brought back. They need to be embraced by the light of your consciousness, your awareness. So awareness goes, it reaches out to the areas that are hurting, basically. And in so doing, it facilitates the process of purification. In order for an area that's gotten out of alignment to get back into alignment and to reflect highest health, usually something needs to be let go and something needs to be gained. And so bringing awareness to that area helps to facilitate that process. And it's a kind of transformation that occurs. It's a transformation, and it starts by happening at a very subtle level, on the level of consciousness itself. And really, really, it happens in the gap between the absolute and the relative. But then, once that adjustment has taken place at a very abstract level of consciousness, this sets up a foundation for the manifestation of a new storyline, essentially, of a new situation to come forth. So that's essentially the principle behind energy healing. As a healing modality, it's like non-invasive. It's very non-invasive. It's natural. It's always customized for the individual. It's like a very nice kind of healing work. And I would say that whenever healing occurs, that process does occur, whether it's conscious, whether a person's consciously aware of it, or whether it's just sort of happening under the surface. It still happens. It has to happen because we have to make the changes at the foundation of life on the level of consciousness before we can see the results at the surface of life. So that's the principle. Okay. We're going to start with some silence, some 3 minutes of silence. And the purpose for this is to allow everybody here in the group to kind of come together in our inner space and to enjoy the connection with the source of creation, which is a really like fundamental and integral part of the energy healing process. Remember, I said that shift occurs in the gap between the unmanifest source of creation and the whole manifest field of creation. So getting connected up with the source of creation is part of the story, is the awareness starts to become comfortable with how life exists at the surface, and then deeper down, and then it gets comfortable with that experience of the source of creation, and it becomes that journey that the awareness takes from the surface to the subtle. It becomes sort of second nature, it becomes very comfortable. And one of the reasons we get together as a group and do this is because we practice that together. And it helps being in a group. It helps because everybody's doing it together. So we kind of create a field effect a little bit. So thank you for being with me. I'm grateful to have everybody here and having us doing this together. And it's a very interesting topic today. So anyway, we'll get into that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and have our silence. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to turn on my clock so I can time it. And you don't have to worry about the time. I'll let you know when 3 minutes is up. And then definitely take a minute or so to gently come out of that quiet state, because that's how we integrate the silence. That's how we integrate the power and the infinite resource that is accessible at that level of our consciousness. All right, let's close our eyes. All right. Take a little bit of time before opening the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being all of us, and for being the whole universe, and for being the all important connection between the unmanifest, eternal, absolute ocean of pure being and the entire oceanic field of its expression. Thank you for this webinar. It's such an exciting time to be doing a webinar. May this time that we have together be well spent, efficient, meaningful, powerful, valuable for each one of you, for each one of us, all of us together. Thank you to everyone who's here for joining me and for giving me the opportunity to be the voice of the group and for the opportunity to share the latest insights and understandings about the Reas with you guys. I'm really excited to be here. There's a question answered box down below. I noticed that, sometimes I do. Anyway, thank you so much. And let's dive into the topic, which is healing with packages of divine wisdom. When I say packages of divine wisdom, I mean the Reas. I'm just going to share this screen for right now. All right. So this shows the field or range of the physiology. And, let me just bring this over here. There I am. I wish I could make myself a little bigger, but I can't. Anyway, part of what I'm providing are technologies or means. We look at how we focus our attention, but the other thing is the navigational map, where to focus the attention. So this lovely map, which really isn't my creation, I'm just sort of adapting, an idea that was given to me by my teacher. It shows the ocean of pure unbounded awareness, many, many, many names for that: infinite, unbounded, eternal, absolute field of pure divine being, source of creation, home of all the laws of nature, etc. And then the layers from very, very abstract, which is like more looking like the ocean, to very concrete at the surface. And the thing about this is, in my other diagram, we get to kind of cruise in here on this level, this causal level, because this is where the Reas are found. But looking into the Reas, they are impulses of this ocean of being. The ocean of being rises up in impulses of expression. And these impulses of expression eventually they reach up into the material level of the physiology, or what we would think of as our minds, our hearts and our minds and our physiologies. And they do that through the astral body, because the astral body is the part of the physiology that's just threads of consciousness. Like, think meridians, right? Threads, meridians, channels through which information flows. And you can think of the meridians or channels in the astral body like the wires in your walls. And the Reas are like the impulses of electricity that run through the wires. So the wires themselves are not the actual energy that's fueling the lights and fueling the computer and so forth, but the wires are the vehicles for that light to flow. But the Reas are the light. The meridians are the wires. So the Reas, you could say, are impulses of light. Oh, also, for those of you, if you're taking notes or something, although everyone will get this recording afterwards, Richas, Reas. Anyway, the Reas reside down here at the causal level of the physiology, nice and big so everyone can see it. And when I bring up my other chart tomorrow, it'll have them in here in relationship to some of the other expressions of intelligence that we find in the causal body. But the important thing to note is that the Reas, as impulses of intelligence, are simpler than some of the forms that we find at the causal level of the physiology. Some of the forms that we identify at the causal level of the physiology are the expressions of life force that literally heal, right? Like they're the packages, they're the laws of nature that are responsible for the healing process. But the Reas are the informants. The Reas inform those active expressions of consciousness that actually cause the transformation to happen. So the transformation is caused, you could say, by expressions of life force, or even you could say life form, that oversees the healing transformation in the body. But the Reas are the packages of intelligence. The Reas represent the resources that are used by the packages of intelligence, by the devatas. And we really, Tom, make a note. My husband, he's the back end of my business here. My husband is here, and make a note that we need to do a webinar just on the devatas and the archetypes and the laws of nature, because those are like the devatas, the archetypes, laws of nature kind of fall into a category of the life force that occupies the causal level of the physiology. So the energy, pure energy field of the physiology is the causal level. And it looks like an ocean upon the first encounters. It just looks like this giant ocean of pure energy kind of rising in waves of expression. But the intelligence that resides there is your intelligence, and it is responsible for not only building the body in the womb, but also maintaining the body and supporting its growth and evolution throughout the lifetime. And of course, healing the body as well. And the components of those archetypal forms. So you could say the archetypal forms, they occupy the whole causal space. And they are like, it was reminding me of, I don't know if anybody's ever been to the ocean and seen the little animals that live in the tide pools. But the little animals that live in the tide pools have sort of developed themselves over the course of billions of years, millions of years at least, hundreds of millions of years, to be able to live in this place where the dynamic waves of water are washing in from the ocean all the time. And all the causal forms, all the devatas that heal the body, and all the angels and archangels and ascended masters and laws of nature, all these more sort of structured forms, they're like that they're designed to live in a place that is ever in motion, ever flowing, ever shifting and changing, like the sands on the floor of the ocean, something like that. So the Reas are the sands. The Reas are the spaces in the rocks of the tide pool. The Reas create the context that supports a certain expression of intelligence to reside at a certain place or time, as opposed to a different one, like a particular law of nature, for example. particular law of nature that supports purification, for example, will be supported by impulses of intelligence that inform the purification process. But it's that law of nature that's responsible for actually carrying out the purification. I hope that makes sense. So the Reas are the informants, and the Reas are comprised of layers upon layers upon layers of the three gunas, which sit in the deepest level, in the gap between the unmanifest and manifest. We've got the three gunas, and they're simple. The three gunas are these very, very simple principles of creation: expansion, transformation to contraction. Expansion and transformation to contraction. Or you could say expansion and then maintenance and then contraction. So three gunas, very, very, very simple principles of creation. And then they're rolling and rolling and rolling upon each other. And there are different ways of looking at the three gunas. And anyway, there are ways that there's kind of like a law of reflection that's down there, so that the expansion is looking at the contraction and reflecting upon it, and the contraction is looking at the maintenance and reflecting upon it. And so there's this whole kind of myriad of, so that's why it looks like my necklace, like it's this field of just fantastic reflections upon reflections upon reflections of consciousness in its own nature, something like that. And so that reflective quality causes these three gunas to layer up on each other, right? Because the contraction is seen in terms of expansion. And so that causes kind of like a layering of both expansion and contraction. Anyway, it sounds complicated, but it's actually kind of simple, really. This is the time in the webinar where the Reas show up and the download begins. This is where the nature of the three gunas reflecting on each other comes in more like a visceral experience, like a direct awareness. Three, it's just three acting together as one. It's actually very simple. The visceral experience is useful because ultimately, as we engage in this process of penetrating the fine layers of consciousness with our awareness, familiarity is gained. And as familiarity is gained, this is literally familiarity over the switchboard of nature's functioning. This is the familiarity over precisely how the material world is created and what gives rise to a material world and a life that's worth living and fulfilling, and the unfolding of one's pure potential, full potential at every moment, versus a life that's not that. The three gunas roll in on each other, they fold in on each other, and they ultimately give rise to different sort of, I would say, we could say the purest or components of the Reas. The Reas components are like really simple expressions of the divine. Basically, they're expressions of God. They are the facets or the ways that we understand God, because everything is, the creator is creating all of this, right? So it starts with the expansion and contraction and maintenance, and then that gives rise to combinations or permutations of those that start to have qualities to them, and these qualities are qualities of the divine. So simple but beautiful: truth, purity, beauty, innocence, mercy, love, forgiveness, gratitude. These are the fundamental components. And as I was thinking about them in relation to the Reas, it occurred to me that those components are like the notes in a song. You have a a note of purity, and you have a note of truth, and you have a note of love, and you have these different lovely, beautiful, very sort of pure expressions of divine intelligence. And then they combine together, like as in chords, or they can also combine as in little musical phrases. And the musical phrases are the riches. The musical phrases are the combination. The I would say, for those of you, for the musicians in the group, the riches arise from the relationship between those notes, right? And so I almost brought my flute or something, but anyway, not to take too much time getting off on tangents, but um, maybe tomorrow if it seems relevant. But when you have a note, I have a note, I'm giving you a note. That note could be beautiful or it could be awful, depending on the context, right? Because if I put this note together with this note and this note, and then they sound like they're fighting with each other. If I play them all at the same time, so I've got some microtones in there, then you end up with a note that's like you can't find where its center is. And it becomes very difficult to listen to a note like that. So context is everything. Relationship is everything at this level. So the impulses of the divine. Now, the thing about the impulses of the divine, they're creating relationships between them, right? As they combine together to make riches, which are impulses of intelligence that are rife with resource, and they inform, and they imbue not only the devatas and the subtle forms of our consciousness, but all the way up. They go all the way up. They're carried through the meridians. They're carried through the threads of the astral body up to the heart and the mind. And they ultimately, when they're staying in their pure form, they give rise to experiences like experiences of synchrony and moments when you reach in for some piece of information and there it is. I know we all have experiences or moments where we reach in and there it is. And sometimes we reach in and there it isn't. but that all has to do with context, right? It all has to do with context. And the other thing about it is this principle from Vedic science that the key to the whole thing, the key to having the riches lively in awareness. So I mentioned these are the resources. So these are the values of consciousness that rise up to provide nourishment and help smooth out purification and support integration of the healing process. It's so beautiful that the context is created by the anchor or connection of awareness with the source of creation. Because when the awareness at every level is really, it's dropped into the field of the absolute, and the pure source of creation is kind of sitting behind the whole dynamic process of how the three gunas and the fundamentals and the riches and the archetypes and everything emerge from the source of creation, then it's all kind of overseen and guided and orchestrated, we could say, from a cosmic level. And the cosmic level of creation follows the rule of evolution. Evolution is like this fundamental rule of the universe, that everything is ultimately evolving. It's ultimately an evolving universe, an expanding universe. Just so much thickness of riches coming through. Even though I know you've heard this before, you've heard me say this before, you know this stuff. You guys know this stuff. It's not new stuff. But the riches, the richness of the riches. Oh, we could do tongue twisters, couldn't we? But the richness of the Reas coming through with that with those fundamental principles of the way the field of consciousness is set up provide validation and context so that it makes sense and so that it ties in to your own healing journey. Because that's the important thing that we're doing in these webinars is we're looking at the navigational map and exercising, placing attention in that map in different angles at different places. And the net result is the activation of the healing process. That's the important thing. So when the Reas rise up, they come sparkling into the field of expression. They come sparkling into the heart and mind, into the etheric body, into the physical body. Oh, we're at such an interesting point in our process. It just so happens that everything in context, right? Everything in relationship to everything else, that this live webinar just happens to be straddling an eclipse tomorrow. Actually, I believe you looked it up, right, Tom?
No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. Oh, I guess my son looked it up. It's at 1:00 our time tomorrow, the eclipse. And the webinar is also at 1:00 our time tomorrow. So for those of you in Europe, that's going to be like around 6 or something. And I don't know if you've gone through your time change yet. But anyway, so we have this setup, you guys. It's a setup. You've got the sun on one side and the moon on the other side. That's the setup. And the sun represents that eternal wholeness. It represents the personal expression or experience of the source of creation. And the moon is the mind. And when they're opposite, it's interesting that eclipses are considered to be inauspicious, which I'll go into in just a minute. But very, very powerful things happen around the time of eclipses, because when you've got the sun on one side and the moon on the other side, you get this very powerful gravitational balance on the earth, right? Because the sun and the moon are producing the strongest gravitational pulls on the earth and on our little human bodies of all the planets. All the planets have some gravitational pull, but the rest of them are either smaller or they're farther away, or for whatever reason, they're not quite as just dynamically interacting with our physiologies as the sun and the moon. So when you get them on either side, it's a very auspicious combination. And you get people a lot of times, if we're talking astrology or whatever, it's not uncommon to get people born near an eclipse or even during an eclipse who have very dynamic personalities. Like I remember reading that Julius Caesar was born during an eclipse, and we all know he was quite a powerful force in the ancient world. So, but there are others. There was like a whole list. I saw a whole list. I just don't remember. I remembered him. My daughter. No, my daughter was born during an eclipse, just next to it. It's auspicious. It's auspicious. And it's auspicious because the setup, the relationship is such that it supports deep internal experiences. It supports spiritual experiences. That's why eclipses are considered inauspicious, because it's not a good time to be trying to do things out in the material field. It's time to do things inside. So the doing is like a non-doing, right? The non-doing involves the transformations that occur on the level of consciousness inside. So it's a great time to meditate. It's a great time to do energy healing. It's an auspicious time to have a webinar, an energy healing webinar. So I hope those of you who can join me will, and for those who can't, you'll get the recording. So we all get it one way or the other. We'll get all the benefit. Anyway, the point is that even right now, we're already kind of coming under, because where we are in the Western Hemisphere, that moon is rising. It's just been rising up, and the sun and the moon are still quite opposite of each other, even though they're not fully in the shadow of the earth. The mind reflects, the mind is the moon, right? The mind reflects the light of the soul. The light of the soul is the sun, as fully as it can reflect it at this time. The mind reflects the light of the soul. And the impulse of intelligence, the impulse of experience that rises from that relationship is the one that reveals the vast, unknowable nature of the absolute. It communicates infinity to the physiology. And even gravitationally, this is communicating right now. It's just like we're in it. We don't have a choice but to be in it. But the thing is, so often we're in it, but because we're in it, like like the little creatures that live in the tide pools, it's like they don't know they're in it because that's just where they always are. They just think, well, I'm always in the water, right? Like, what's wet? It's wet down here, like, because they don't know dry by comparison, right? But for us, we have this fabulously flexible nervous system and range of expression or range of capability of the field of our awareness. And so that gives us an opportunity to step out sometimes and witness what we're actually experiencing. So I just feel to take a second, just taking a second together and enjoy and appreciate the feeling of the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon on our little bodies. The sun on one side, the moon on the other. The light of the soul reflecting off the mind. And with gratitude and reverence, step in. Let the awareness step in and witness that experience. Reverence and gratitude. Appreciation, love, recognition. For the fact that our universe helps us. It helps our soul, the light of the soul, the being, and the mind, get into a relationship with each other that supports the opening of the door of infinity from being to the mind. It opens the door of infinity. And infinity feels like the lightest, brightest, most buoyant, like you can't pin it down, state of awareness. The awareness itself is lit up, becomes lit up by infinity. And we realize how much there is in the universe, how much we know, how much potential there is to know more. All the details, the parts that we don't know, they all manifest at the surface. But deep inside, it's simple. Deep inside, it's simple. The expansion, the maintenance, and the contraction, they're working together as a unit. It's really simple. The light of the soul and the whole universal structure maintains it. And the light of the mind working together to refine and cultivate the potential of awareness. Awareness lights up. It is a light that is capable of being a container for the absolute. It is a light that is capable of being the container. It is the container for divine being, for divine source. And what does it do? It folds back to the source of creation. Of course, because what else is beautiful on this earth? What else is beautiful in the creation but the source of creation? Right? Where else would the awareness go? There's nowhere else useful to go. Source of creation, all there is. It's all there is. And awareness falls into the source of creation and soaks in that ocean of absolute bliss and is refined and nourished and expanded. It's provided with the resources to become the greatest that it can possibly become. And it's infused with its task. Awareness has a task, and that is to interface with the physiology first and this whole field of life in a way that promotes refinement and stability and adaptability and evolutionary growth. I mean, refinement, stability, and adaptability are like the components of evolutionary development. That's what awareness does. That's its job. That's the nature of its relationship with the material field of creation. And it does that by doing one thing. It seeks out the areas of this field, whether it's the human body itself or whether it's the whole field of life around, that are not feeling completely aligned with wholeness, that aren't feeling completely aligned with the source of creation. Awareness knows what the source of creation is. It is the source of creation. It's source of creation material on the move. And so it's easy to find where those spots where the wholeness is not completely integrated. And it falls into those fearlessly, courageously. It falls into those spots, those areas. This is where the Reas come in handy, because the Reas provide resource to support a graceful transformation of the areas where some lack of integration is occurring in the body or the environment. Lack of orderliness, lack of like a full unbounded flow of energy right in the body. I love you all so much, and I'm looking into the field of our collective. And I'm getting different stories from different bodies and seeing how the whole structure of the body, all the different parts and structures and systems and so are ultimately present for the purpose of upholding and supporting the nervous system and senses of perception, which are the part of us that you could say is like the great sort of central carrier for our awareness. So our nervous systems and our senses of perception. So everything kind of orients towards feeding that. The food that we eat, the nourishment that we take in our body, 20% of it goes to the brain. Oh, the oxygen, excuse me. 20% of the oxygen that we breathe in goes to the brain. But I think a lot, maybe I'll have to look that up or ask my physiology teacher again, how much of the nourishment, but it's a lot. It's a lot. The brain uses a lot of the body's resources, considering that it's such a small organ compared to the size of the rest of the body. I feel as I look into the field of our collective that what's happening is orderliness is presenting itself. Now, orderliness would be one of those expressions of the divine, right? It's like a simple expression, like truth or faith or whatever. Orderliness is coming in. But let me just look again. Orderliness. What orderliness is doing is it's helping the awareness to understand the body in a more simple way and to prioritize the flow of energy in the body. So this is an upgrade for efficiency of energetic flow in the body. Because what we do is what's happening is orderliness increases and it carries with it the riches. So orderliness creates like a kind of a sacred space to allow certain riches to come through. This is important to note that the source of creation is constantly, endlessly producing these packages of information, the riches, packages of cosmic information. And there are all kinds of packages of cosmic information. And they all have different places that are appropriate for them to reside or to end up. And that each one of us is set up. We've kind of created a context within our physiologies and within our minds and our hearts, based on the beliefs that we hold and based upon the tapestry of the electromagnetic field of the physiology, which there probably should be a webinar about that too, Tom. Thank you. But in any event, the Riches come and they help to connect the value of orderliness, which comes in a very pure form, like pure orderliness, like cosmic orderliness or divine orderliness with a big capital O, with the field of the physiology, which experiences orderliness in some places and chaos in some places. And it's like a constantly evolving field of expression. And so this orderliness is shifting. The orderliness is there, and it's providing the impulses, the riches are coming through, and they inform the aspects of intelligence in the body we could call the healing potential of your physiology. How to move, how to change, how to rearrange things so that the sources of energy in the body, which includes like oxygen, it includes light in all various forms and expressions, even gravity, even, of course, all the materials that we take in through the food that we eat. So those are also one of the forms of resource, the prana, the life in the food. How to redirect those resources in the body so that everything lines up in a kind of a hierarchy according to the needs of the evolutionary needs of the body. This is happening for all of us. The evolutionary need of the body is for every breath and every impulse of life within us to take us closer and closer to divine expression, pure expression of the divine. It's a very beautiful goal. It can be eventful in the short run, but it leads to comfort and high quality of life in the long run. It leads to inner peace in the long run. So the events in the short run are outweighed by the benefits that are gained. You could say the rewards outweigh the risks. And the adjustment is so graceful. It's carried on such cosmic waves of compassion, supported by the sun and the moon at this time. Of course, my recording is going to go up online at some point, and people might be watching it years down the road, who knows? But for now, you guys are here live. That's the benefit. That's the advantage. The Rias. The Rias are the resources of intelligence that inform the evolutionary transformation carried out by the healing intelligence in the body. And when awareness settles down to a very deep level, it's possible in the gap to feel the waves of the Rias rising out of the source of creation, like surfing or something, like being out in the ocean, feeling the waves coming in, the waves of divine intention. You could call the Rias divine intention. The intention of the source of creation for everything to evolve. And they're beautiful. And spending time down in that gap, feeling those waves coming up, is very refining for the physiology, for the nervous system, for the awareness, the whole system, the whole from the very, very abstract all the way up to the physical material, the whole, all the layers of the self. Enjoy those waves that come like from the fountainhead, right? They come from the source of creation. And they're beautiful. Everyone is beautiful. Every one of them is beautiful. And there's a gauge at that very fine level. The Rias provide information to all of us of a gauge in that very fine level of the physiology that allows you to turn up the waves or turn them down, depending on where your comfort level is at any given moment. Because we're different in every moment. Every Riya changes us. And there could be a moment when, okay, it's been a lot of Riyas. Now it's time for a little rest from the Riyas, right? But what you want is you want to get into the sweet spot, right? You want to use the gauge. You want the Riyas, once the gauge is established. I'm looking now through the group, absolutely checking everybody's gauge. Everybody's gauge. To everybody's gauge established. Nobody left behind. It's okay. Even if you're watching this video decades down the road, doesn't matter. Awareness isn't bound by space and time. And it's not me doing it. It's the compassion of the mother of the universe, taking care of all her children. I'm just reporting it. I'm just the reporter. I'm not doing anything. You're doing it. It's a self-interaction. Energy healing is a self-interaction. I should have put that at the beginning of the video, right? Definition of energy healing is a self-interaction. The gauge has a sweet spot. It has a spot where, or maybe it's a little range in there. For some people, it's a little range. Maybe there's a range for some people where the Riyas are coming at the perfect pace, the perfect intensity, that the physiology can easily keep up with the transformation created by those impulses of intelligence, by those resources. It's like resources, right? So it's like eating or breathing or something. Like you don't want to hyperventilate, you don't want to overfill yourself, but at the same time, you don't want to starve either. You don't want to, you don't want to expire from not breathing. So there's like a nice, even middle range. And that range will inevitably change because each Riya changes us. Each impulse that comes from the source of creation supports our evolution. We become a little more evolved with each interaction, with each Riya. And when the physiology becomes a little more evolved, we can accept a little more. We can take in a bigger richa next time. We can take them in faster succession. So there's a gauge. It's got a sweet spot. And the sweet spot is measuring both the speed by which the richas are coming in and the intensity of the packages, like how big of a package of pure knowledge is it? You guys. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act with the physiology, because ultimately the only inhibiting factor is how much flexibility and stability there is in the nervous system. Because the nervous system, remember, that's the vehicle for awareness. So when the vehicle is like super healthy, then the awareness is not bound, doesn't get overwhelmed. The other thing is the directional flow of the richas. In other words, what are they addressing? Because these are impulses of intelligence, right? So they actually have like purpose. They have purpose behind them. And that's where the prioritization, oh gosh, see, I didn't see this coming, you guys. I didn't see it coming, but here we are. That we did the healing just a few minutes ago to create orderliness and to help kind of prioritize a hierarchy of where inner resources go, right? Now we're at the point in the healing session where one of the things that's gauged, one of the ways we gauge the richas is this richa really pointing to my next step of evolution? How well does it line up with the most important thing that I could be doing at this moment? And there is where Dharma and karma are coming in. I think sometimes karma can push the resources around a little bit, so they're not always like spot on where they need to be. And Dharma helps to keep them aligned, helps to keep the resources aligned with your highest potential. This adjustment is being made. This adjustment is happening. And when I say being made, I'm not making the adjustment, you guys. Remember that. You're making the adjustment inside yourself. I'm just reporting it. But like, such a privilege. It's such a privilege for me. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here to describe what I see. Because it's beautiful, and you are beautiful. And you are the divine showing up in this world. So I feel like I'm bathing in the light of the divine, and it's a very special place to be. It's a gift. Dharma. Dharma. Dharma is, remember I was describing how this setup is in the causal body. I've got my other screen over there, so I'm pointing out like as if you can see that. Anyway, the richas are the resources that inform those structures of intelligence that are responsible for putting the world together, basically, for creating the creation. And Dharma is one of those structures. Dharma is a presence. Dharma is a presence in this creation. Now, the essence of Dharma, the presence of Dharma, the sense of it can be carried to the awareness on the wings of the richas. The richas are packages of intelligence, right? So they come to inform the awareness. What is this Dharma? What is this thing that helps keep everything aligned and helps keep the richas flowing, manifesting forth in the right order, in the right sequence, in the right design. Dharma does it. And as I'm looking at it, I'm getting my own downloads as I'm doing this. So I'm sharing this with you too. Dharma is like this multifaceted thing. It's fractal and it's universal and very beautiful, a very beautiful thing. And so the level of Dharma that is responsible is more of a cosmic form of Dharma. Like Dharma, there are a lot of Sanskrit words like that are so rich, they're so rife with meaning that it takes paragraphs and books to describe it in English. But it can mean something, it can mean something as simple as your station in life or your job in life or what you're supposed to be doing, your Dharma. And even at any given moment, what is it that you should be doing right now? Are you aligned with Dharma by doing what you should be doing, or are you off doing something that's like frivolous or not life supporting? But it also means at more of a cosmic level, Dharma is the means by which the evolutionary process is carried out in a way that maintains balance in the universe. Like that's another way of understanding it. Sometimes it's called the sustainer. The Dharma sustains the creation because it helps to provide the resources that allow all the different laws of nature that are functioning in all the different parts of the universe to work together in a synchronized whole that then provide a context for like us to live on Earth, like as human beings on this planet. It's that level of Dharma, that understanding of that cosmic level of Dharma, which is so intimately integrated with the evolutionary process that is activating in the awareness and in our physiologies at this time. And it comes with the utmost delicacy, the utmost gentleness. In the Vedic tradition and in the American Indian tradition, interestingly, Dharma is represented by a bull. In the American Indian tradition, a buffalo. But in the two traditions, it means the same thing. And we think of, well, a big animal like that being so, kind of crude somehow, or very big and moving around, like pushing its weight around. But when we're talking about these cosmic forms, the potential for them to move with profound delicacy is also present. And it's really, really important because remember the gauge, that the movement of the riches and the movement of the impulses of intelligence within the physiology to heal us has to be sensitive, so sensitive that it goes into the areas where suffering is the greatest. And those areas are often guarded, right? And it has to be able to move in those areas without disturbing all that is already good in those areas, without disturbing the underlying structure, without disturbing the original intention of the creator for that area of oneself, if it's a physiological imbalance or some other kind of imbalance. And the original intention of the creator, of course, emerged from the source of creation as such a delicate impulse. So delicate. So the movement of the healing energies in the body have to be that level of sensitivity, like really, really delicate, which means they have to shine the awareness, intelligence in that part of the self has to be able to shine both out to the surface of the physiology where changes are made, but also in to the source of creation where the utmost delicacy is found. It has to be able to go in both directions at the same time, which, of course, necessitates the adaptation of the nervous system to become more adaptable, right? Because in order for the nervous system to be able to handle the flow of awareness going out and in at the same time, the nervous system has to be adaptable, flexible, has to be flexible and stable, that we don't get overwhelmed and overshadowed and set off our course. So that's the transformation that everyone's nervous system gets to enjoy at this moment is the expansion or the integration, we could say, of adaptability with utmost delicacy. Like we're talking cosmic levels of delicacy, right? We're talking divine levels of delicacy. Oh, being delicate, like that quality of being super, super tender or super delicate, that's one of the fundamentals, right? Like that's one of the qualities of the divine, showing up as a tool or as a portion or a part of the richa. It's like one of the components. It's one of the components of the resources that are present in this part of the healing. It's nice to be more flexible, right? More flexible. And of course, flexibility and stability they go hand in hand, because we need them both together. We need them both to grow together in order to remain steady, remain the gauge. Remember the gauge, so that we don't get outside of the range of what is really evolutionary for the physiology. Okay, I could keep, I can just like ramble and keep going on and on, but I see I've already gone past 8:30, and I did want to spend some time at the end talking about the answering some questions. The first question is like so profound, like going already all the way in. And the question is, how are richas different? How, I'm going to rephrase that. How do richas differ? Okay, here's what she wrote, word for word. How are richas differ with pranas? So I'm trying to understand the question. How are richas differ with pranas? I think what the question is, how are richas different from pranas? And pranas are like the different airs there. And here, and also this is coming from a really incredibly amazing, wonderful woman who just finished a course in pure knowledge, which unfortunately, I didn't hear that lecture, by the way, the one about the pranas. So I missed that. Maybe somebody else who's here on the, in the workshop was present for that, that particular knowledge course that took place just last weekend, and heard the lecture about pranas. My understanding is prana is like chi. It's like the pure air of life that rises. That's like one of the pure forms of the way the divine shows up in the creation. It shows up as this structure, prana, which is kind of like it both means air, but it also means like the subtle flow of divine expression that's the life force within the body. And you're using the word prana plural. So I'm wondering if you actually mean the subdoshas of vayu, which is air. Air is the Vedic term for vayu, is the Vedic term for air. And all the different elements, so space, air, fire, water, and earth, have subdoshas. They're comprised of 5 subcategories. So the question could be, how do the richas differ from the subdoshas of vayu, the different airs in the body? But the word prana is being used. So I'm thinking that it really has to do more with prana in particular. And But I don't know about multiple types of prana, really. I mean, I know prana can show up in a lot of different forms, but I thought it was my understanding. Some of you guys are more Vedic scientists than I am, but it's my understanding that that prana has its fundamental form, its very, very abstract form, and then it shows up at the more material level, and it does end up showing up as the airs in the body. The different, you've got some airs that go up and some airs that go down, and some airs that go around and around, and like that. Some airs in the ears, in the head, some airs, any space. Anyway, there's a space, there's air. So how do the riches differ? Prana is pure life force, and it's not so defined. Yes, it becomes more defined when it shows up at the material level of a creation, but the riches are, we interact with the riches down at the subtle level of creation, at the same subtle level of creation that we interact with the subtle values of prana, the subtle value of prana. And at that level, prana is this just incredibly pure form. Riches, on the other hand, are like well defined. They are impulses of intelligence. They're specified, very specific. Whereas prana is like the very life force that's at the fundamental level of the physiology. So that's my best shot. That's my best shot on that question. Thank you. It was a very deep question. I really appreciate it. Somebody's really thinking, really very kind of intellectual. I'm opening it down. Did you say the eclipse is inauspicious or auspicious? Well, yes. It's inauspicious for doing things in the material level of creation. And particularly the one tomorrow is a lunar eclipse. And the moon is one of the forms that's, the moon and the sun both influence digestion, but the moon is especially responsible for the production of soma, which is the finest byproduct of digestion. So it's definitely inauspicious for eating. Don't eat around the time of the eclipse if you can avoid. It's considered inauspicious for that. It's inauspicious for doing things in the material world. It's very, very auspicious for diving in. And I can say from my own experience, my best meditations, my most amazing, profound experiences in meditation have often come during an eclipse. And meditating during an eclipse is a great thing to do, but it's not trying to accomplish anything or achieve anything. Wouldn't be a good auspicious time to start some new big project or something like that. But it's a wonderful time to dive within and to experience the depth and the range and the potential of your own consciousness. A lot of things in the relative are like that. Not really black and white, really, right? But just, yeah, each with their own meaning. Thank you. It's a great question. Thank you. Okay. When you mention the nervous system, I take it to mean the physical nervous system of our body. Yes, correct, right. What if your nervous system is not healthy, like damaged? Just wondering. So nobody's nervous system is perfect, right? And by the time, one gets to be a certain age, and so that there can be, the effects of age on the nervous system, there can be toxins in the body that can influence and affect the nervous system. There can be physiological anomalies like little twists and turns, things like that, little places where a knot maybe got into a little, a nerve got into a little knot or something like that. So, absolutely, nobody's nervous system is absolutely 100% perfect. However, the nervous system is really, really pliable. It's really flexible. And in the hippocampus, which is the area, it's known as the inferior temporal cortex. So it's like the part of the brain that's just kind of down here at the earlobes, that area, right, kind of inside, just behind the earlobes. The brain produces stem cells. It has lots of stem cells, and it produces new nerve cells. So the brain can make new cells. Even if you have lost a few nerve cells, brain cells here or there over the course of the lifetime. I mean, you know, I probably lost a few over the course of my lifetime. Anytime you're under stress or anything. Every time I had a baby, 15% of my brain just like shut off from everything else in my life and was just on that baby. And then I had three of them. So what is that? 45%. Oi. So but anyway, the point is that yeah, the nervous system is so exquisite. It's so beautiful in the way it's made, and it's so flexible. Like something like yes, specifically, I learned in a class on the brain that 70% of the dendrites in the brain, which are the little arms that come off of the brain cells, 70% of them change every day, just based on your experience. Like the fact that we're spending this time together, we're sitting together in our circle of healing partners and friends, and we're focusing together on this healing work. In fact, that's how energy healing works. You give yourself a few minutes during the day to actually focus on your healing, and what that does is it restructures patterns in the brain. A few minutes a day does it, and a few minutes a day with awareness on the source of creation is just brilliant. It's oh so revitalizing, oh so transforming in the very, very best possible way. And it really is my belief that damage can be undone. Can Reas still flow through? Yes. Because Reas are flowing not just through the physical nervous system, but they're flowing through the entire energy field of the body. So they're flowing through the body anyway. And then, the nervous system gets what it gets from that flow, right? And it changes and adapts according to the flow. But the next time another impulse of intelligence rises up, the nervous system's in a new space. And so can accept and receive even in an even better way. Is this a reason that one must be healthy for Reas to flow? There's definitely an intimate relationship between health and evolution. And the process of the journey of becoming healthier is also an evolutionary process. And the evolutionary journey is aided by the health of the body. So it's almost like you could almost think of the evolutionary process and the healing process kind of being like the 2 feet helping to move the system forward. Consciousness expands, the nervous system adapts to the expansion, which allows consciousness to expand more, which then causes more adaptation in the nervous system, which then allows more consciousness to expand and stabilize that expansion more, and so forth. And it just goes and goes. And that's the purpose. That's one of the, really the purpose of humanity. I was thinking about it just in the last few days. Really the purpose of humanity is to be an anchor or a point of understanding for the divine, to know itself. We're made with these amazing nervous systems that allow us to explore the universe. We explore the world in ways that other creatures don't. Like we make telescopes and we look out at stars and we create, we come upon an understanding of calculus and mathematics, and we explore the universe through mathematics, and we explore the universe through music, and we explore the universe through all the different ways that human beings explore the universe, right? God bless all the creatures in creation, but they don't do that. Like fish don't do trigonometry. They just are. They just live. Trigonometry is their nature, but they don't know it. Right? But we know it. Like we're special that way. So, yeah. The purpose of humanity is to know the creation and to be the point through which the divine knows itself, because it created the creation. It knows its own creation. It knows itself through us. And that's really a cool thing. And so the purpose of evolution is to make us ever better instruments or tools for that process to unfold. Yes, it makes sense. It's kind of simple. It's really kind of simple. But as long as we're like, as long as the hierarchy of priorities is organized around that, then life just life aligns with that and moves forward on that path. And when that happens, it's really good. It's really good. It promotes a higher quality of life, and it promotes good health, and it promotes all that we value, all that we as human beings consider meaningful and important in life. It might not be what people would like. It's not what people learn in college, right? When you go to college, they might not teach you that, but ultimately, hopefully, even those in college are receiving the Reas. They're receiving those reaches, those impulses of intelligence that help inform of that important information. It is important information. Thanks for asking. What a great question. Next question. How can we support the physiology beyond meditation to rapidly expand to hold the work of the Reas? And how can we gauge our expansion specifically to support our nervous system? No worries about spelling. Richas. The best way is to internally choose to be dedicated to that goal, and to be dedicated to that goal of being the instrument through which the divine understands and knows itself in this creation, and knows the creation. Because that will align the individual with Dharma. So part of it is always seeking to align with Dharma. These are ways that we support the physiology, because when you're aligned with your highest potential, then your physiology feels at ease. It's like that, that saying sometimes, like, I've seen it in our culture sometimes in various slides, like, how can that person sleep at night? That saying, how can that person sleep at night? Because if you get to the end of the day and you look back and you're like, everything I did, every moment was well spent, then that feeling of every moment was well spent has this effect on the nervous system, right? Because our nervous systems are adapting themselves based on our moment by moment experiences throughout the day, 70% of the dendrites, right? So when the behaviors throughout the day are aligned with Dharma, and we can include in that aligned with like virtuous behavior and morally sound behavior and ethical behavior like that, right? Common sense even, and truth, that type of alignment. That will give rise to experiences in the nervous system that allow it to become more integrated and more flexible and more stable, and it just goes right. It just becomes like a fortress. The nervous system becomes a fortress for the divine. So the beauty of this is that you have autonomy. We all have autonomy over how that storyline goes. We all have choices at any given moment. And it's very difficult to be able to take into account all the different factors behind every choice. So the meditation you mentioned, the alignment with wholeness, sort of helps to inform. The alignment with wholeness gives rise to the correct Reas coming forth at the right time, which then helps to inform the individual what would be the best choice to make at any given time. Because sometimes your choices are great, right? Like, well, should I cook a meal, or should I make music, or should I work on this or that? Should I take a walk? Like, all those are good choices. They're all moral. They're all virtuous. They're all, should I read a book? They're all like perfectly acceptable. Nobody's going to look at you and go, "Oh, I read a book." I mean, it's just like, there are lots of good things any of us could do at any point. So what happens is that decision-making process becomes more and more and more refined, so that just in the finest moments, almost in the gaps between thoughts, the information about what would be the best next action, the best action to take, it presents itself. And you know it because it carries the feeling of your pure potential in it. The thought, should I read a book, or should I work on art, or should I take a walk, or should I take a nap? And you think about, and they're all good things to do, right? But one of them lights up. One of them like really literally carries within it this pure light, this pure, sweet, sultry, satisfying value of one's own self in the highest light that one can be. So you go with that one. You go with that one. And that's kind of, in a sense, that becomes the gauge. You mentioned a gauge. It's a slightly different kind of gauge than the one we were talking about earlier, but you can use the light of your pure potential as a gauge for making the really tiny moment by moment decisions and choices. Should I keep talking to this person? Should I ask them questions to kind of perpetuate the conversation? Or is it time for me to move on and go do something else, excuse myself and say, now it's time for me to go home. I've been at the store for a while now. I bought all the stuff I needed to buy, but you know what I'm saying? Something like that. It's almost like the heart, that gauge is in the heart. The heart tells you. Good question. How can partnering with the Reas help us address stagnation in the body? Oh, and I'm also looking at my, speaking of which, okay. So here's what I want to do, because that's a really great question. That's a question that I could like really dig into, and I'd really like to give it some time. So why don't we stop there? Because I'm looking at the time and I realize I'm already 15 minutes over. And I just want to give you this information that my husband put in the question and answer box. We'll follow your questions tomorrow. We'll go into the questions tomorrow deeper, and the European questions and all the questions. But he said the partial lunar eclipse of the full Hunter's moon will begin at 2:01 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or 18:01 Greenwich Mean Time. Is that GMT, Greenwich Mean Time? On October 28th, that's tomorrow. The most striking parts of the eclipse should occur around 3:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 1935 GMT. As the moon enters the darker part of the Earth's shadow, known as the umbra, peaking around 4:14 Eastern Time and 2014 GMT. So that's the time not to eat. That's when you don't want to eat. So have a nice breakfast. Those of you who are in America, have a nice breakfast and then plan to have a nice dinner. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the first time. People came to me afterwards and said I ate during the eclipse and I didn't digest very well. So it can happen. You can try it. You can try eating during the eclipse and just see how it goes down. Just see how it goes down. But I would suggest to just don't. Anyway. All right, my beautifuls. So some more questions coming in. I love it. I will begin tomorrow probably addressing questions, or, well, you know me, I'll do the overview of what is energy healing. We'll do our moment of silence, prayer of gratitude, then a slight review of today, and then we'll go probably into questions. So thank you all so much for being with me. It was really fun. I'm really grateful that today's session, I got to dig in a few more healings. Sometimes all the healings show up in the Saturday session, but I'm really glad that we got to make some adjustments and get the priorities there, get the gauge all set up and functional. And of course, we'll have to review that a little bit for everybody tomorrow, but we'll be there and do it. And I love you all dearly, and I can't wait. See you tomorrow. See you very, very soon during the eclipse. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye. Have a lovely evening.